Hey yoga mamas and friends, I'm back with a shorter video on doing a little hip hinge. So you probably have heard of cat cow, which is when you come to tabletop and you just arch the spine and you round the spine alternately. So a lot of times you hear people say inhale and arch, that's cow pose, exhale and round, and that's cat, and just go back and forth. And there's different variations of this. Like you can, people do it in a standing position. I'm going to show you a little seated variation, either from Virasana or a supported Virasana, which you with a block or a bolster under your hips. So just support yourself if you need to. But as you come to your seated pose, you might bring your hand to your back and just feel, is it lengthened? And the back will never be totally straight. You should have some curves there, but basically is the pelvis, mostly up and down instead of tilted back or forward. But we're going to do that movement as we do it. So the hands come to the thighs. Take a breath in, and then as you exhale, round the spine. And that looks like the pelvis tilting back. And the last to move is the head as you tuck your chin. Inhale, tilting the pelvis forward, and see how the spine follows. So let it be like a wave. As you exhale, first tuck the pelvis, round the spine from the lower mid to upper back, and then the head moves. Then inhale, tilt it forward, and the rest of the spine follows from the lower mid to the upper back, and then the head looks up. So try that at your pace with your breath. And some people like to add some movement in the arms. So as you round, you might kind of give yourself a hug. As you inhale, the arms can open up too, and that adds a little more openness in the chest and in the upper back. Slightly different experience than just doing cat cow. Good. So that comes into play in a lot of forward bends. Like for example, let's say you're getting into staff pose to do Dandasana. So you might see that sometimes people collapse back. If you've got tightness in the back of the legs, you might collapse, and it's always helpful to put a little support under the hips if you do. And even so, it might still be hard, but you're here, you're supporting yourself. And then as you come into it, rather than rounding forward and just kind of hunching toward your toes, the goal is to hinge at the hip, tilt at the hip, and let the rest of the spine follow. So even if that means you only hinge that much, there's your Paschimottanasana, you're sitting forward bent. If you're used to going through your toes, that might feel really unsatisfying, but try it and just see how keeping that length in the spine as you hinge, even if it's a millimeter, gives you an opening in the back of the legs that you won't get if you round forward. Okay. Same with things like butterfly pose. You might need support under their hips, or maybe you don't. But if you find yourself rounding, you're going to sit on a block or a cushion and see how that tilts my hips forward. Now as I inhale and lengthen the spine, and then again, I tilt or I hinge the hips forward until I reach that point of stretch that feels good enough where I need to stop. So rather than rounding and dropping the head toward the feet, I'm going to hinge and the whole spine stays long. Okay, that will give you a nice even stretch in the hips. Okay, so this video is going to be connected to a post on my Substack newsletter, Urban Yoga Mama, about downward dog, and that's the whole reason I make this video, is because in downward dog we have that same action of tilting or hinging the hips. Now if you are very tight and you tend to round, and you may not know that you're doing it, but if you know that you do it, or if you feel tightness in the back of the legs, it can be so helpful to bend the knees a little. And when you bend the knees, it allows you to take that rounding out of the spine by hinging the hip. Okay, and then pushing down through the hands. Now sometimes people will do this and then they just jut the ribs forward. What I mean is they just thrust the ribs like that instead of really hinging at the hip. We want it to come from the hip. Yeah, so let's try it again. Tabletop, spine is lengthened, and as I straighten the legs, I'm doing my best to keep that length in the spine. If I need to bend the knees, hinge in the hip. It's very subtle. Give it a try though. You might need to go back and forth around the spine and then arch. Okay, it's a small movement. Honestly, I have a little tightness in the back of my legs right now, so that hinge I'm doing might not be super apparent. But go ahead and try it. Bring some awareness to your day when you're sitting down or standing up. How's your hips? Are they tilted back? Are they overly tilted forward? Yeah, play with it when you're standing, when you're sitting, when you're doing yoga, when you're not doing yoga. This is really good functional movement for your life, where you could just bring some awareness to how you position your hips and how that position in your hips affects the rest of your posture in your spine. So I hope you found that helpful, and that you bring this into your day and into your yoga practice. Thanks for watching.